Hello and welcome to Biz Buzz with Bruno, presented by Mads Theater. And today I'm so excited to bring back one of my favorite people in Madison, the incredibly talented and incredibly wonderful Kelsey Shainhar.
Shainhar.
I got it, yeah!
You did, I know.
From Encore Studio of the Performing Arts.
Encore
Studio
for the Performing Arts.
See,
Yes.
We're going to get it already. We're going to get it already.
Yeah, take your time.
So, Kelsey, thank you so much for coming today.
For sure.
So, for people that maybe don't know you, and I'm sure there may be one or two people that haven't come across your path in Madison throughout the years, give us a little bit about your background, your little backstory.
Wow.
Anything you'd like to share with people?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. Prior to Encore, I did a lot of different things. I was a professional theater person since probably I was 18, working in musical theater. But prior to that, I was a professional musician since I was 12 years old.
And was this here in Madison?
Wisconsin, Milwaukee, mostly Milwaukee area, but kind of, the way it goes is, club and wedding gigs. It's kind of around the state. So, it did it. And it definitely, I never had a lesson. So I taught myself kind of everything I was doing. Once I got to college, I did have scholarships for music in a couple different colleges and music schools. And then, of course, there's no choice in the matter. You have to have lessons and instruction. But I was a double bass performance major in those days. Did orchestral work for a while. But a lot of music has definitely been in my past. I have in the middle of that time between I started working in the field supporting people with disabilities and different managing different things since I was like 21. So makes me old, but it's going on almost 40 years.
And how did you make that transition? How did you find that little spark of in your life between going from music?
Yeah, it's weird. It is kind of weird. I mean, eating,
yeah,
and it's something, it's just something I felt it just felt akin to. And at the time, I didn't know that I was a person with autism, but it felt kind of like home-ish, it was kind of, these are my people sort of a thing. And so doing that, and I guess in the autism spectrum, I'd be very high functioning. And so there's always good and bad with it, with everything, we all have our stuff.
Sure.
But in the autism spectrum, for some people, it's just that honing in and that focus and just doing it until it's done, which makes you a bit of a workaholic, but it's very helpful with, starting a theater like Encore or working in I ran residential programs and recreation programs in the very early years. But yeah, so I've been doing that for almost 40 years. I guess I've been, how old am I?
So you're ageless.
Yeah, right.
You're of a certain age.
47 years as a professional musician. It's weird to think of it that way, but yeah, you start young, and yeah, it was a lot, and I wouldn't advise it mostly for kids that young, but that was what I did, and I was able just to kind of do things. My brother was older, and he had older friends that were like 15 and 20 years older, so they were gigging all over the place in bars and clubs and occasional weddings and things like that. And so we just toured a bunch, and I played lead guitar for most of that, but also played other instruments as well.
And was it just you and your brother?
No.
Oh, you come from a large family?
My family.
So no,
I have three brothers. That brother, he died like 20 years ago.
Oof.
And but I have two other brothers and a sister. So yeah, Catholic family of 5. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So when did the little germ of Encore come into your brain?
So obviously I was kind of intermixed in working in the field of human services, working with people with disabilities. But as a musician, I also got an MBA in there as well when I was between some of that. So that was kind of helpful. Then basically well, a lot of things happened, but I moved from Illinois to Wisconsin. Needed kind of to get out of town. Things were not the best there, so I left town, came to Madison, and decided to do something, go back into the field. It just felt comfortable, and just to kind of get my foot in the door, I went to Rem, Wisconsin for a while, and managed kind of a highly medical house there. It's a group home, but it was an interesting house where it was very medical, and it had some complications and a lot of strong personalities within the house. So that was kind of a good way to utilize some of one of my degrees within the MBA was human resources management and healthcare administration, of all things, which I use all the time now.
Of course.
I mean, it does help. If you're starting a nonprofit, knowing HR is a pretty good thing to do, especially because we're so small.
Right.
But
and was this in the late 1990s?
This was 1998.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. When I started there. And then, like, within a couple weeks, I had heard that a friend of a longtime friend, Alwyn Blake, Hanson Blake, rather, she basically, they decided that we should have a theater for people with disabilities. And they had seen an example. There was a theater that started just a few years before us, Interact in Minneapolis. Interact, I forget what they're called, but they're in Minneapolis. And they did things a little differently. They're they sort of workshop things and sort of build things up. My structure is a little bit different than that. But nonetheless, they wanted to have something innovative, something interesting. The thing is, there's only like just a couple in the whole country that did it. I mean, there still is. It's only just a handful. There are theaters for people with disabilities in different ways, but not quite like ours. Not where they're professional paid actors.
Exactly.
It's a different structure.
Right. And that's what makes Encore stand out, is that all your actors and people there are all being paid to do that profession.
And always happened, right?
Yeah, and always happened from the start when I first came to.
Yeah, and that was definitely one of the basis of what we were going to do. But then basically it was what I wanted to do and what I was able to sell to them. And I had done, I worked in professional theater as a musician mostly. But then I'm working with all the directors because my friend was a musical director. And so I did a lot of stuff within that realm. But then I started to write, doing some children's theater. This is when I was still in the Chicago area and stuff like that. And, produced some things. But what I noticed is that in children's theater, there's always this interesting sort of canned work. That's supposed to appeal to them and is supposed to appeal to their parents and things like that. But I didn't want to talk down to them, and I didn't want them. I wanted them to utilize their voices, and I just met with the kids. And sat down and just read, was able to pull out from them how they sounded, what they liked, what they did. And I wrote to them. And that was my whole premise with Encore as well, because I had such success. It was the cool thing about it is I did both things. I directed some things in the past where it's really bad scripts and things that don't, fitting that square peg in a round hole.
Right.
And it just didn't feel right. It was always forced. Kids hated memorizing stuff, or many kids did. But if you write to them, to their sense of humor, it was just so easy. And kids are just, they can be such sponges. And so there's so much there. And so for allowing for that gave us so much more room to make it a much stronger piece, even though it's children's theater, and it's not to poo-poo it that much, but it was, it wasn't Broadway or anything, nothing, they weren't getting paid and anything like that, but they really did enjoy themselves. And it made a huge difference with what the result was. It was always fun. They always had a great time there. You know, it was cool. And so that concept is what I basically brought to the table when basically Alwyn and Sarah Whalen Blake is Alwyn's mother, and also an Madison legend
Yes.
who just passed recently.
Yes.
Amazing women, both of them. And yeah, she was part of the interview process when I was there. Alwyn brought her in, and yeah, that's what I sold. I sold that concept to them, and I don't know if I don't know how many other people were selling that at the time.
Probably
But
not.
but
Probably,
it just was, and it just made so much more sense. And I had worked with, you know, I was already in the field for maybe like 12 years, 13 years working with people with disability by that point. And I've done some different musical things and directing things. And it's kind of along the same lines where if you really make it fit the person and take the highest skills, you know, if it's honestly adults, kids, whatever, I mean, with or without a disability, if you're able to do that, you can sometimes pull a lot more out, I think, of a performance.
So were those people your core people from the first production that you did? How did you select those actors?
Our first
Yeah, your first show that was at the
Monona Terrace.
Monona Terrace.
Yeah.
Yes.
Monona Terrace was pretty new at the time.
It had to have been. It was what, 2000?
It was, to October, I think like October 14th of 2000. Yeah. And yeah, it was kind of crazy because so I started May 1st of 2000. And basically I had from that time to September 6th to put something into place, get things going, get the structure in place, have enough actors to open the doors and make Encore, you know, get it going.
Right.
I was told basically in the interview I had 6 months to make it work, so I didn't have much time to mess around, and so I was working crazy hours, you know, easily like 60, 80 hours a week.
Oh man.
And you know, that, I mean, it actually went up from there from time to time depending on how busy we were. But so we auditioned a lot of people. Everybody was very interested. We happened to start at the time where something called self-directed services was a big deal, where people were able to choose what they did. And that seems so crazy to think that there was times in our life where we have all, you know, these people, that this whole group of people that really wasn't afforded the choice to say, I want to work here, I want to do this, I want to live here. You know, that people had lived in institutions for such a long time, and we're told, this is your roommate, you know, there's just no choice in the matter. So a lot that changed. That was a big change, and so this was part of that. And so we just happened to land at that point. And so we had a lot of people who are working in places where they never wanted to work and never wanted to do what they were doing. And so we had a lot of auditions, but we did start. Yes, the first performance was in October. But we opened the doors at Encore September 6th of 2000. So we had from September 6th to October 14th to come up with. So I basically had met the individuals. So September 6th was when we opened the doors. We had auditions, so I knew them. I met them, but I had to be, I had to garner enough from them so I could write to them and do everything I had kind of hoped to do and write to their highest skills and to their personalities and to their voices, which were incredible voices, with incredible experiences that, as we sort of went through our early process with shows like To Love or Not to Love, which was our first full-scale production, hearing those voices was kind of, it was very impactful for a lot of people. The most common thing we heard said was, that wasn't what I expected. And it meant a couple things, though, which was cool. It meant that I didn't expect people to have it memorized, to be so compelling, to be so professional, but they also didn't expect to have the subject matter, which was incredibly adult, and dealing with issues that no one would even think of at the time, or still to this day, that people with disabilities experience. You know, things, abuse and sexual experiences and relationships and everything. That was To Love or Not to Love. What that was about was, it was basically originally, it was what was it? It was a group. We were asked to write 4 scenes about sexual abuse awareness, and that's how it started, and it spread out from there. It wasn't just the sexual abuse awareness, which makes for a pretty hard show.
No kidding.
Yeah. So we doubled the space. We doubled what it was, and added other things, which, you know, thank God lives aren't that, you know, it's not all abuse,
right?
But it's the lived experience of these amazing people, and it was all their stories and their experiences. And
did you write music for that one? Was it?
Yeah, that was the music.
Because you write almost all, if not all.
I've written all except we've had in the most recent years, since Heather Rankin has become the artistic director, and that was in 2020. I had written most everything. Now I've written with people through the years. We've had some, but I would say, you know, in terms of what I was part of by like 2000, I had written, I don't know, of the stuff we have, about 95% of it. There were some times where I was writing with somebody, but I was attached to it too. Yeah. So yeah, that was kind of how it was, and that's just kind of the nature of having so little money to make it all work, and wanting to make it work, wanting to have it to its highest level, and so you just work and work and work and work. And again, that's not something I would really recommend either. It's not the best way about it, and you know, hindsight and all, being 2020,
right?
But the reality is, it wears on a person, and it definitely has.
And plus having such a short deadline. I mean, it's not like I said, here, you have a year to get this done.
Oh, right. And so going back to the beginning,
it's like, okay, we've got the date here. You have to have product in like, what,
it was just like, okay, this is happening. This has got to happen. And so whatever, we had 4 women who were part of the first repertory theater company that we were when we started. So we had 4 women. So it was just women. So that made it interesting too. It was a kind of a different, you know, that was our voice. And they all had different learning styles. They all had they were pretty complicated, amazing people. I mean, with really amazing, complicated lives. And so it wasn't just, they needed a lot of support, mostly emotional support and things like that. But they also had this excitement. They just really wanted to be on stage. They wanted to share their experiences. They wanted to share their voices. And so at the time, it was crazy, because I had just a few weeks not to train actors who have never been on stage before, but also, you know, to convey this kind of intense stuff at the time. And we started with, our first piece was called Not Stubborn, Not Strong-Willed, which was it had a monologue that was about 20 minutes, and then we had like a 10 or 15 minute musical part that was sort of tongue-in-cheek and sort of fun. The monologue was a mixture of fun but reality and this world that this person grew up in. But again, at the time, the self-directed services was so important. That's what that was written for, and that's how we were doing this original production at the Monona Terrace. Unbeknownst to us, it was like a crowd of like 600 people. Wow. It was crazy, and I've thought of this story recently, that when we went there, I brought my equipment and my piano and the sound for the piano. I didn't expect they would have that. so I brought that in and set it up, and I said, we need our mics, our lavaliers, you know, at the time. It was a big space, and of course the crowd was huge.
Right.
And they're like, they cost a fortune. And their expectation of us was just to be this little, you know, third grade presentation. And I said, I was like, I was pretty like, no, we've worked our asses off on this, and this is something that, you know, we need them, and so I pushed and pushed. They got us the mics, and they were crazy expensive at the time. This was like 2000 at the Monona Terrace. It was still, you know, probably hundreds of dollars per mic or something to get rent mics from them. So we did that, and yeah, it was way more than they expected. The crowd erupted. It was the coolest thing. I couldn't have planned it, but it was just, I think when expectations are so low, it's like, holy shit, this is really something. This is this is, you know. But that, you know, as hard as I worked, you know, the actors every bit as hard. I mean, they were just so dedicated, and that was a cool beginning.
So what space did you rehearse in? Because this was way before there was
right
where you are now.
Right, the space
before the Bartel, right?
So right. It was right before, that was before we were part of the Bartel. We were part of the Bartel for almost 10 years. But we had a room essentially that was like kind of a leftover room, and at Rem, Wisconsin, it was just a kind of a space that was open.
Oh, where the offices were?
Yeah,
off the Beltline.
And so and so they were like, yeah, you can be there. And so that's what we did. And it was, you know, wasn't pretty, wasn't special, didn't have, you know, it was nothing other than a space to have people gather and rehearse. And yeah, it was fine. I think so. We were there. We were part of Rem for not quite 4 years. Yeah, because they were bought out by a company, and they basically divested us, and that was mostly because they asked me my opinion at the time, and I remember saying, well, something has to change, because they were, you know, they garnered the money. We were a nonprofit inside their for-profit. The board of directors wasn't a really, I mean, it was legit. I mean, legally it was, but it really wasn't what you'd want. Basically, it was the owners of the for-profit company. They didn't do anything. They weren't active. They did nothing. They did no working. They did no oversight, nothing. So their for-profit company was their oversight, and it was kind of, it wasn't the best situation. You know, it was all above board, and companies do it all the time, but it wasn't best for the structure of a theater. And so I remember when the company that bought Rem and kind of brought them into their big behemoth of a company, like the biggest support company in the country now at this point, they came to me, and I said, well, I need to have a local board, or you need to give us a hell of a lot more money so we can actually function.
Right.
And you know, so I basically put it out there, and I at the time I was, something's going to happen. So I either knew I was going to be fired for saying a little bit too much, or they were going to dump us, or they were going to give us more money, and they divested. So I guess I wouldn't say dump us. They still had, you know, they had a lot of admiration for what we were doing. It just didn't really fit in their structure. And they also knew that how I guess I sold it well enough to say that we need to be able to continue to grow and be a community, you know, based in Madison, an actual nonprofit that has a board of directors that actually is focused solely on the organization, as opposed to 3 people who own the company who have absolutely no idea what we do.
Right.
So fortunately that happened, and Rem was kind enough to allow us to keep that space for a few more months, and I think we left with like $16,000, and off we went. and we started again, basically. But in the time when I was still in that space, I had like, you know, like 7-8 months or something to put all the nuts and bolts together that we would be completely separated from them. So at that point, I was
And that
I
was
was the executive director at that point.
probably about the same time that Sarah was getting the Bartell put together.
No, yeah. So the Bartell actually was before that. So we were,
Oh, it was before?
yeah,
Oh,
we were
okay.
part of the Bartell before that. So it didn't take long. I'd say less than a year. We were at the Bartell in less than a year from the time we opened, because we opened our first show at the Bartell in August of 2001.
Okay.
And after that show was done, we sat down with the board and we became a participating theater company, which is what PTC is what they're,
right,
I think, still
no,
called.
they still do call them PTCs. Yeah,
Which is pretty. It was pretty cool, pretty innovative to have this kind of cool, you know, right off the square space, and this with this group of, you know, it's mostly community theater. But now there's definitely more professional companies in and out, but mostly it was community theater at the time, and we were there. So yeah, it was a great place. I actually really have tremendously fond memories. And leaving the downtown area was a little bit tough. It was, you know, we went from downtown to our theater that we built off of Fish Hatchery Road. So it's not that far away, but it's far enough away for it to change. I mean, because when you're on the square and you have all these condos everywhere, you have people that just walk by and say, "Hey, let's see some theater."
Yeah.
And so,
your market street, because it's not tucked away.
Yeah,
because it really is right on Fish Hatchery Road. If they think you're down the little side street.
Yeah, we're right.
So you really don't get a lot of foot traffic.
No, we get no foot traffic. No. So everything has to be word of mouth, and that's kind of how it's always been.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't even know where we left off or what the last question was.
So now you ended up at the Bartell as it's a participating theater company.
We did, right, and that was so around from 2001 until, yeah, I think it must have been around 2011. I have to look at that for sure. It's interesting.
That sounds about right.
But it's about that.
Because I came back to Madison in 2001.
Okay.
And I remember that I actually worked at REM. I was actually working at REM.
Yeah, we met early on.
That's how I first found out about you, because the King of Soul was one of my Bill was one of my guys.
One of our amazing original actors.
Yes. So that's how I first got introduced to all that. Then of course, you know, Sarah being at the Bartell and having the Bartell start up, and I'd known that when I was coming back, I thought this is a really cool. That all the companies that I worked with as a kid, Theater Guild, Strollers, and, you know, all those companies, and it was such a great fit to find. Oh, this is great that Encore is one of the participating theater companies.
Yeah,
it was great collective downtown.
It was pretty cool. It was an interesting experience. I mean, by and large they worked really, really well together. But you know, there's a lot of strong personalities.
Yes.
And so it wasn't always smooth sailing, but you know, when you're a participating theater company, you are on the board. So there's your part. You know, it's a really interesting thing of how the structure is. So, and it's a working board too, which made it really difficult for me, because at the time, especially early on in Encore history, we were doing our local shows. So we wanted to have 3 productions a year, like other professional theater companies would. But we, at the time, because, you know, we're the newest thing and there was money in the system, you know, if there was money to be had and to be spent. So we're touring all the time. I mean, we would have like 4 different shows cooking at one time. And we'd have, in a day, we'd have like just a few weeks to get things up and running. A show, and we would redo them, so that was helpful. But it was kind of crazy, and I definitely was working well over, you know, from time to time over 100 hours in a week. Sort of crazy.
You didn't have an entire staff working.
No, I mean,
back then, did you?
Initially, for the first few years, it was basically me and a part-time staff, and then we had a couple part-time staff, and it took a long time for me to get additional full-time person. It was most of that expansion happened once we were divested. Then I could actually make some choices and start to build the business in a different way that allowed us to expand a lot more than we were within that structure.
So then how did you come about, how did you find, or how did you come upon the space that you moved out of the Bartell into?
Yeah.
What's the great story there?
Well, it's interesting. It's located off of Fish Hatchery Road on Martin Street. And, people know Martin Street. It's not too far away from Badger Road and sort of kind of closer to the Beltline. And, it's an interesting neighborhood where the beginning of it is a little bit, I would say it's a poorer neighborhood. But it was kind of cool though too, because for the history of Madison, for me it was very cool because across from our studio we have a big park,
right?
And then there's a road over where there's another park, and that's where the Yahara River goes through.
Right.
So kind of a cool space. Yep. But then if you walk down the street, you walk into Lost City.
Right.
Which, for those who don't know about Madison and about that history, I think it's called the Burr Oak neighborhood now, or was then too. But basically, it was this big plan to have like water features and like the Venice of Madison. Yep. It was kind of crazy, and it was definitely sold. This guy from Chicago, made a whole bunch of money, and then took off, and he ended up in prison. But what's cool, the space, the original Martin Street, the concrete road that was built in, I think, the teens or the 20s, still exists. It's a path. And you can see these roads where it's almost like my arm's width, It's just like so narrow for cars of the day. Right. Or buggies or whatever. And if you walk through the forest area, there's still streets that exist. Those concrete roads are still there. They're underneath and they've held up well, and it's cool. That history was kind of cool, and it's just nice to walk out the door and into the Arboretum. Right. Yeah. So yeah, it's a really cool spot that I liked about it. It was just basically affordable, and it was an open space. It was just concrete openness, and I said, well, this is I did all the designing with at the time the president of Encore's board, Paul White. I basically laid it down, but he came out brought his chalk line in. We were snapping chalk lines, and saying this is where these are where the offices will be, and this is where things will be set up. And this was actually before we decided that would become our theater. So we turned our main rehearsal space into a 50-seat black box and used that for a long time, 15 years, a pretty long time. It was called the Mary DuPont Wallace Theater, named after one of a grandmother of one of our actors. The husband of Mary DuPont was on our board forever and was just incredibly generous and just an amazing. He's still on our board. He's in his 90s.
Wow. Now, is this
Bob
the DuPont
Wallace
of the DuPonts?
No, no.
What a great story that would be, though, right?
Yeah, little P, I guess. Is what they say. Yeah,
makes all the difference.
You're right. It makes
a little P and a big P make all the difference.
I hear it. Yeah, I can. But that was really that. So that was for many years. That was our space, and it was a nice. What I liked about the space, it had the similarity of the Bartell Evu space,
exactly,
which was to say it had that intimacy. So I really liked that. Not only are we sharing these really intimate stories, but we're doing it in such a close way where they almost are part of it. They're just like they're in the theater, they're in the performance themselves, and so that theater. Our theater is the same, where people were just very, very close. And it was it's like you're having a conversation. Our new space we just built our space and opened it this past last year in 2025. It's called the Martin Street Theater. We're on Martin Street. I like that history. So that space is 100 seats as opposed to 50, and we're fitting our space, which is limited. That's the upside, is that it's mostly affordable for us to be there and to have the entire building and an entire parking lot, and don't have to, which is a real it's a real luxury. But the downside is the building is the building, and so the ceilings are like 11 feet tall, and for things like technical aspects of a theater, lighting and stuff, it's limiting, and so there's a lot of adjusting we constantly have to do to make that work. In the best of all worlds, if we ever maybe bought the space and raised the roof, I think that would make a really big difference in the space. But we just.
But I'll tell you, the shows that I've seen there, it's like it's not about the physical space that you're in, because like you say, it's so intimate, and you're watching these unbelievably remarkable people do these amazing shows, and it's just the most heartwarming and amazing thing. You kind of forget that you're like in the theater. You're watching these people tell their truths and tell their stories, and they're incredibly talented. I mean, you really have grown this company.
I'd like to say I definitely had a big part of things, but I've also had just amazing talent come through, and people just so dedicated to the work we've done through the years at Encore. People just so dedicated to theater, but also dedicated to the work we do and to the people we support. And as you know, in theater, it's many people play the role. So
Absolutely.
you're just kind of, you hopefully you can facilitate as much as you can and do the best you can.
And you also have, the amazing part of that. You have well-known actors in the regular theater community in Madison joining your cast.
And so that's kind of by design. So we do something. Our actors are supported. This is their job, so they're supported in their job. So supported employment is what it's called, and I'm sure we're well familiar with that. But the supported employment allows, so we need to be within the community to make that a thing, to make that work. But it's always worked out wonderfully, because we have community actors, professional actors, pretty much in all of our performances or interacting, and many of them, sometimes they're on our staff, sometimes they're on our board, but almost always they're in the shows we do. And it's been interesting I think too, that I think other professionals have come and been really pleased with how professional and how dedicated people are, and that our actors are. And that was also, I think, a bit of a surprise to people. But then again, this is the focus, and our actors take it seriously, and they're there to work. They're not there to. It's not
sounds elective.
It's not just for fun.
It's like something they do after school.
Right. Or like community theater can be. Not to say to take anything away from Madison, which has some of the best community theater in the country, probably.
But there is a difference. I mean, there's a difference when you know that you're doing it as your career, and you're being paid to do your job, and whether it's acting or choreographing or directing and whatever it is, it just steps up the level of and the people around you.
Right.
It's like, because that you're dedicated to what you're doing, and that you're getting compensated for it. Yeah. It's wonderful to get the applause, and it's wonderful to have the community supporting you.
Right.
But when you make it your livelihood, it really and it's amazing that that you're acting, your core of actors. It must be so incredibly fulfilling for them to know that they're doing this and that's their job.
Yeah,
it's like, this is my job.
I think that's pretty universal. I mean, when you see it all the time with actors, from the biggest stars to if you're, you have that opportunity and have that appreciation for it. I think, how do you feel about being able to do it through the years?
Right.
I mean, personally.
It
is very cool.
It is very cool.
I feel very honored to have been part of the theater scene in Madison for now, over 26 years. That's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool scene. And I feel pretty proud and pretty lucky.
And like we were saying earlier, it's amazing that there is longevity to it. because there've been a lot of there've been a lot of ups and downs. I mean,
Yeah.
COVID being the big nasty in the middle.
2008 was very hard.
And 2000, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it knocked out a lot of a lot of potential things that maybe couldn't have come back from that. And I said the one thing I've always been so grateful for is when we had to switch over from doing live performances to doing things video. And watching all these companies all of a sudden go, what are we going to do? And then you have to retrain everybody to think, okay, we're not thinking stage anymore. We're thinking that we have to do it for a camera. And we have to act for a camera. We have to build our sets for a camera. We have to light it for a camera. And watching people kind of like think, okay, yes, we had to protect ourselves because even outside you could die.
Right.
So it was like,
so
how do you compensate? It was always wonderful. I was very grateful that Channel 3 let me do behind the screens and be able to say, these are what companies have to do and what they're doing and how they're doing this and how they're making this into a new art form. And especially like even the professional companies or the high schools. It was like, some of my fondest memories were doing my high school musicals. And here were these poor kids, juniors and seniors. And it was like they were so geared up to doing their final high school musical. It's like, sorry, not going to happen. You're not going to get a chance to do it. And then watching the teachers and watching the faculty and staff be able to say, you know what? We're going to do it. You're going to set a camera up in your house and you're going to go out and get, your mom's dress and your dad's hat and you're going to scrounge for props and you're going to do the show, but we're going to do it like a video.
And we did the same thing. I recorded people, they were on Zoom and I would just pull things, edit from there at the time. And we just made it work. It was very different, but it was pretty fun sometimes.
Well, it also,
you did things we never would have thought of doing.
And you learned skills and learned things, and the people that did it think, I didn't sign up to be a TV actor or do a film or do things on camera, but they learn those skills as well as learning the skills of being on stage and how to sing a song, how to do blocking.
It's very different.
It's a whole different set of skills.
Well, we had done a bunch of, had done lots of different videos and filming things for a while. I've always liked to the sort of multimedia aspect because it brings that dimension. I mean, that we've always, I basically designed both theaters that have rear projections. So we're allowed to have really clear backdrops that can change. Sometimes they can be moving, but it allows, it's a little tricky for lighting because you have screens. But it's possible. And we've been doing it for years, and it's nice to have that versatility to have any set. And it also keeps us more focused on the theater aspect, the working, not as much on the major set builds and things like that.
Exactly, and because you're limited, because you only got 11-foot ceiling.
We're limited. We're right. We're exactly. We're people. Right. We can fly. There's no fly. There's no fly space. Exactly. So and the other thing is we're working a lot of people that our repertory company actors are people with definitely developmental disabilities, but also physical disabilities. So allowing for that movement and accessibility is paramount. We have to have it.
Exactly.
So our sets have always had to be minimal, just so we can accommodate now we have 20 repertory company actors.
That's so cool. So that brings us to real life.
Real life.
So this is going to be your final show of the current season. Is that right?
Yes, and it will be probably the final time I perform it. So in the history of Encore, I've only performed this show. This is the only thing I've ever done. I'm not an actor. I'm a director. I'm a writer. But
and you're an incredible musician and a
I'm
songwriter.
A musician, yeah.
I mean,
well, so that's why thank you. When I wrote this was autism wasn't very well understood, and I had two children at the time. I'm trying to think how old they were. They were under 10. Two daughters who had high functioning autism. It's different now. Everything's sort of autism spectrum disorder, but there was things like considered Asperger syndrome and all sorts of things, and those have taken a hit for a number of reasons. Some of the names. But what I what you saw at the time was, either very, very special seeming, where people were heroic, or people were just Rain Man. And so people had a very limited, excuse me, long COVID.
I know.
So people had a very limited scope in terms of what they thought people with autism, how, what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote my character kind of around myself, around a brother who had autism, and my daughters. So sorry.
No, it's okay.
And but then I had all these other people I was working with as well, and so I wrote to their world and their stories, and they were just so interesting and so compelling and so different than I think most people were thinking of what it is to live on the spectrum. And so basically it's 4 different lives. And my character is kind of central, narrating, kind of introducing different things that kind of are part of her life, but also part of the story that we're telling amongst the other 3 characters we're talking about within. My character is that hyper-focused person who plays, I think, I played over 40 instruments, but in the performance I played probably about 25.
Unbelievable.
And mostly it's sort of down to space, where I can't bring as many things as I could, and I don't want to, it becomes a little bit, I don't want it to become only that, but it is part of the show, because I'm playing, and that's how that character communicates. It is through music,
right.
And it's kind of her life, and her life has had so many roadblocks. And I think what we've done in Encore, and this is definitely part of real life, is that we're not just telling the heroic. We're not just we're definitely not talking about the special. We're talking about real experiences that real people have. And so, and sometimes it does feel kind of special. Sometimes it does feel heroic. There's some of that, but it is mostly these lived experiences. And sometimes it's happy, sometimes it's sad, and sometimes it's just real. And at the time when it came out, now this is 2004 when it was premiered, there wasn't as much knowledge. Now there's more knowledge. It is different. I mean, there's different shows on a lot of the streaming services,
right?
And it's all, again, it's still narrow. I think how autism is explained and expressed. And one of the things that we say a lot is, if you met one person with autism, you met one person with autism, because they're just like any other human on the planet. It's not one thing. It's not 2 things. It's not 20 things. It's just it's very unique to whatever individual that's living those lives. So the 4 lives we're having do have differences, but and some sameness. But I think we're trying to express that it's almost anything. It's a spectrum. It's
right.
And some people can be super high functioning and be billionaires, sort of the Bill Gates sort of personalities and other things of that nature. And then you have people that do have very, very serious, sometimes very debilitating type of autism, where they're nonverbal, and their life is very different than what that would be, and then everybody in between. I mean, it's that's why
it's a spectrum.
Right? Yeah. It's the millions of colors of the rainbow.
And has it changed since the first time? Have you updated the actual the dialogue and the music since the first time to reflect where we are now?
That's a good question, and I thought a lot about it, and I was going to do some tweaking. And what I really didn't much, because I thought that there's some historic stuff there that's kind of important, and honestly, it still works today. I think the story's still they're still there. My character now, instead of being a 30-something, is now someone who's almost 60, and that's different. It's a different world. So
Sure.
what I'm representing is different
Right.
than but my character was diagnosed when she was 18. So this is a person who's known it for a long time, which is pretty rare, actually. But that did exist, and that's still, it was. I would have been considered it would have been considered Asperger's syndrome
Right.
at the time. And yeah, and yeah, she has a lot of interesting traits, but a lot of my traits, I've since I was a baby, I've always been a rocker. I've always to regulate, I guess. Rocking has always been. My daughter is a rocker. So, but she's also, she also graduated, with honors from UW, and
Right.
I graduated from honors for my program as well. I mean, so there is that, and that's kind of the main character is like that, where she has all these degrees and graduated with honors with every one of them, and couldn't get a job if her life depended on it. She couldn't. There are these roadblocks that get in the way, and I think there is more support these days, a lot more support these days.
Well, sure.
But it comes down to so many variables for so many people. It's like like anyone else, any other kid or young adult, how much family support did they get? How much, how much opportunity did they get within the school they were in? Or, it comes down to all of that to see how successful or not successful a person can be. And of course, then there's also the determination of the individual. And it's, like we were saying, the rainbow
Right.
effect of, but it's not to say that there aren't a lot of roadblocks that have been put in the way for a lot of people with disabilities, and the lack of funding that goes with that. And that's an ongoing struggle.
And how many of the characters are involved in the actual performance part?
All of our repertory company actors are in the play.
All of them.
Yeah,
wow, that's cool.
So that's the one thing we've always done. So we always, I mean, there are times where some actors aren't available. They're out of town. They're doing some other things.
Sure,
that does happen.
Sure.
But if they're around, we cast them. So that's some of the change that happened. So some of the original actors had certain character traits that we no longer have. So if you have a person who's nonverbal and is in a wheelchair, for example, and if that person has left us, which that one of the actors did, so I did rewrite different scenes to accommodate that. So it is different. It's actually quite a bit shorter, about a half hour shorter probably than it was. It was a little bit too lengthy, I thought, at the time. You look back at things, and that's the beauty of it. You get to make those decisions.
Sure. But I mean, you did. I remember seeing it. I remember thinking that I didn't feel like it was. I was riveted to that.
That's awesome.
The stories and what was going on, and just the emotions that you got from it. I walked out of it thinking I could have sat for another act of this.
That's awesome.
It was. It's an amazing piece of theater.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, thank you.
Oh, absolutely.
It's definitely kind of weird and wonderful. We have there was a local. I know he's gone to maybe Virginia or something out. He was he worked for the Capital newspapers, but he reviewed us and called it the most beautiful show of the year, which was really sweet. Kenneth Burns.
Kenneth Burns, sure. I remember Kenneth Burns.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was just how he explained it. It was fun to see because I wasn't objective, and I look, my world, how I think of things, and I'm, people often say I march to my own drummer and all those things, and it didn't seem that weird to me, but it was kind of weird and wild. And some of the songs, but they're based on the voices of the actors, and it was just so much fun to write a song called Fifth. and to write songs, to have these experiences and have them just these things that you wouldn't think a song would be written about. Of course, these days, I guess, with musicals,
right.
It's just about whether anything goes.
Yeah.
But it was very fun, and it's kind of odd, but I think that's kind of the beauty of it. I think there is, and I think there's a lot of people on the spectrum who say this is what I bring to the world, and you know, there's nothing to say that neurotypical or not neurotypical, it doesn't, that's what you bring. But you know, it's nice to have the pride. It's nice to say, because I think as a kid I was bullied to no end, and I was, you know, I had endured a lot, and of course almost everybody with disabilities even to this day has endured a lot. So to find that pride is pretty cool, and I think this piece does that pretty well. Yeah, I've definitely been proud of it. It's definitely it has a lot to say. And we have talkbacks that will on both Saturdays. We're doing only 6 shows, so I really hope people can come and see, and yeah, yeah, as things have changed in my life, I'm having to think about succession, and so this will be probably the last time I do it. And you know, I'm hoping to continue to build, you know, to take Encore to new people, new generations, and hopefully it continues.
Oh, I certainly hope it continues. And it opens on the 29th. Is that right? May 29th?
That sounds right.
And it's 2 weekends.
2 weekends.
So you do Friday night and then a Saturday matinee and a Sunday matinee.
Right. So for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks.
Yep.
Unbelievable. Wonderful. And it's encorestudio.org/tickets to get tickets.
That sounds right. Yeah.
I think I have my notes.
Yeah, there's a number of ways. If you just go to encorestudio.org, you can get to the blog, the front page, and or you can go to tickets. There's lots of ways to get in, but that is a direct way.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And seriously, if you have not seen any productions, please do yourself a big favor and go and see it, because you will walk out of there a changed person. To watch the quality and to watch the joy that this company just exudes is amazing. And it's always been one of my favorite companies to have had the privilege to have experienced.
Yeah, I know we've really appreciated your support for all these years, Michael. It's been really wonderful.
Well, it's been my pleasure. Kelsey, thank you so much. This has been
my pleasure.
And it's flown by, and it's so wonderful to finally have you sitting in the seat here.
Nice.
And happy graduation, everybody. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. And we'll see you next time on Showbiz Buzz with me. Thank you, Brett.